First thing we need to do is to add a floating action button at the bottom here. That way when it's clicked, then we are taken to a different page, preferably where we are able to search for a book. Okay, let's start with that dynamics first. So let's go to our main screen, our famous main screen. That's where we live, essentially. And remember that all of this is inside of this scaffold, and there is, which also has this app bar. Okay, so scaffold and then app bar. So if you click on scaffold, let's scroll all the way down. This is where it ends. In fact, you can see by the help of our text editor here, it shows that this is the end of scaffold. That means then right before it ends, so right below app bar there, I can say something like this: floating, look at that, floating action button. And I can add a floating action button. So let's say floating action button as such, and we can pass a few of its parameters or fields, if you will. So I'm going to start with onPressed. It's going to be a method, and in this case it's going to be, let's just use a full body method there. And then I'm going to add a child widget here. It's going to be just an icon constructor. I'm going to add the icons that add as such. So that is the icon. You can see here to the right, it shows the icon that's going to show. Pretty neat. And while I'm here, I can also say that I want the background of this entire button to be colors, a red accent like that. All right, let's go ahead and save. Let's go back. It looks like every time we need to do twice or 2 times saving main, so we can actually go back to see the logged in user. Okay, that should be something that you may have to do as well. If not, that's okay. But in my case here, because the things are how our things are set up right now with Firebase and so forth, and also little bugs that we have here that seems to permeate our lives at this point with VS Code, the only way for this to work is that you have to go to main and command or control save again. That way we're able to run the Firebase user and then get to the main page, which is where the user is logged in and so forth. Just a little price to pay. All right, so there we go. So we have that button. So what do we want to happen here? Well, when this is clicked, we want to go to a search page. So on press here, I'm going to say we're going to use navigator. I'm going to use the push method, pass the context and the route, material route object or widget, and it needs a builder. Again, you can just hit control space like this to give us the options if we want arrow function or just a full body function. I'm going to use the arrow function. It's just going to be a one-liner anyway. So this is going to be book search page. What's that? Obviously we haven't created that. And then at the bottom here, I'm going to create a stateless widget called book search page, just like what we have there. All right, returns a container, but what I really want to return is a scaffold. Okay, I'm going to say scaffold because it will have the skeleton of a page with everything that we need or we can add to. So I'm going to put an app bar, just like we've seen before, like this. And then for our app bar, let's add a title. The title will just say text as such, and I'm going to say book search. Right. Let's give a background color. Say colors dot white 10, something like this. So it gives it a little bit of a color, not just complete white. And that's about it. And of course, let's go ahead and put a body because a scaffold needs a body. I'm just going to pass a material, and I'm going to give an elevation of about 2.0 for now. Can change that. And for child, we're going to say center like that. We want everything in the middle. And for now, I'm just going to go ahead and say for its own child, I'm going to say text search page. So I'm going to save this, and voila, you can see there is the search page in the middle. Okay, we have that nice thing there, and if you have over, there's the back button which takes you back to the previous page. So very nice. And this, all of this is given because we're inside of a scaffold. Scaffold allows us to add an app bar, and when you do that, then also gives us the back button. Let's actually get rid of this elevation here. That way is a little bit uniform with the main page. So let's go back here. Instead of white, actually just say white to start with. And you can see that the title doesn't show. That's one thing I should need to tell you, because white on white doesn't show. Okay, so background white. Actually, let's change to something different. Let's say red accent. So we have red accent. The elevation, I'm just going to go ahead and say 0.0. So it's just simple. Go ahead and check. All right, pretty bright. We may leave that color as it is, but for now that works. Everything works fine. That's good. So what is it that we want to happen? Obviously, we just don't want to have the search page as it is right now. What we want to happen is something like this, okay? Where users can actually go and say Flutter, hit enter, and then books related to Flutter hopefully will show. Well, the first thing we're going to do is to add that form. As you see here, we have this nice field so users can actually type something into it. Make a few calls to an API, which we'll talk about in a bit, and then hopefully get something. So let's go ahead and add that field. Okay, so instead of this text there, I'm going to change that. I'm going to actually put inside of a sized box, because I want to control the box where we're going to add the text form, or where we're going to add the text field. Now for the width, in this case, we could put something like 100 or 1,000 or whatever we want. But to make this more flexible, right, so that even if this window is smaller or larger and so forth, that way the length of our field is always dependent on the width of the entire view. So make this a little bit more responsive. We're going to use what we call media query. Media query is a class that allows us to actually tap into all sort of things, but in this case we can tap into the actual window size on which this app is working or is being built or is running. That makes sense? So I can say something like this: media query dot of, need to pass the context, and then I can go ahead and get the size, right? And once I get the size, generic size, I want the width in this case. And we can do something like this. I can say, well, I want about 90% of the entire width of the window for this size box. So I can say times 0.9 like this. And I can say height, say media query of context, say size again, I can get the height as such. In this case, I also want something like 0.9. Multiply that, okay? This will prevent us from having these width and heights hard-coded, so that then we run into issues if the window is large, things are great, but as things get smaller, then the sizes will also follow, or they will shrink as they need responsively. If larger, it's going to be larger, but if the window is small, it's also going to be small for all of the items that we're going to be adding inside of this size box. All right, so well, a size box also has, of course, a child, which we can pass a widget. In this case, because we want things to be from top to bottom, we're going to pass a column as such, and we need to pass children. And the first thing I'm going to add is going to be a container, and this has a child. And let's put here a form. The form will gonna just have one widget, which is gonna be text field like this, right? Any text field needs a few things, one of which is controller, and we haven't created this, but I'm gonna call this search text controller. And then we're gonna add a decoration. A decoration we've seen before. I'm gonna call this build input decoration that we've used many times. This is the power of compartmentalizing or of refactoring code, so we can reuse pieces of code. So I'm going to pass a few things. I'm going to say search. Actually, I think this has to be search, because these are named parameters. And then hint text, it's going to be something like Flutter development. Now we're going to have issues here because we need to create. So we're going to go at the top here, and I'm going to create the field. I'm going to be text editing controller. Means we can say, and let's just make this final like this. That way it doesn't complain. It's going to complain that this needs to be initialized. It's okay. I can just say it's equal to text editing controller like this. That's good. We'll change a few things later, but there we go. All right, let's go ahead and give it a look. And you can see there is our field is looking really good. Of course, nothing happens there, but nonetheless, it's looking good. In the next video, we are going to add some padding to make this even better.